Hello and welcome to another video review. This is F.E.A.R 3 for PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. This review is coming to you courtesy of DadHip. He sent me this, so thank you. It is greatly appreciated. This is a first-person shooter and the sequel to F.E.A.R 2 Project Origin. It was released in June of 2011, developed by Day One Studios and published by Warner Bros. Interactive, and it's got a really stupid styling to it, because they decided to replace the E in F.E.A.R with a 3, so people like to call it F.3.A.R now. And it's just one of those things. You look at this thing and go, why would they do that? That doesn't even make sense. So, it's almost like they named it after the Fast and Furious series, where they got ridiculous with that naming. But aside from the naming, how's the rest of the game? Well, as far as the presentation goes, it's kind of all over the place. On the one hand, you have visuals which are outright ugly to look at, considering the texture quality especially is kind of all over the place. Some of them look okay, some of them look really awful. The modeling is generally good, but the animations are kind of clunky looking. And you can just tell this by looking at them, but they almost look jerky in a lot of ways. And so it's something that's kind of reeks low-quality animations for a AAA title like this is, particularly. And it's not even the quality of the visuals that is really the problem with the graphics. It's the art style. They've gone for something that is outright ugly to look at. And I think they were trying to make it scary, but they failed miserably at it because it's just gory. There's tons of gore in this game for no reason. They just throw it in there because they think it's scary, and it's not. So it actually gets outright annoying sometimes when you're going through areas and it's just like, oh, well, this is really unappealing to look at and it's not scary. This is getting on my nerves. That's what the game feels like visually. It really doesn't help. The characters look kind of plasticky. So, like, that really doesn't help at all. But then you have the sound design, which is kind of all over the place again. The weapon sounds are actually pretty good. They sound beefy and concussive in a lot of ways, and the sniper rifle in particular sounds like a friggin' cannon, so that's nice. But the voice acting is about average. It's certainly not bad by any stretch, but there's just some odd line reading here and there. It makes it seem kind of out of place in the whole grand scheme, but for the most part, the voice acting is pretty good. But what drives me nuts about this game is the friggin' soundtrack. Could they get any more generic horror stings? Really, could they get more generic? I can't even speak more than that. It's just incredibly generic horror movie stings. That's it. That's all you get in this game, basically. Sad, huh? But yeah, that really does bring down the sound design in a lot of ways, because you're constantly dealing with those, and they constantly get on your nerves. But what really matters are the story and the gameplay, and the story in this game is complete crap. You play as the Point Man, who is the guy you played in the original F.E.A.R, of course, or you play as Paxton FETTEL if you've unlocked him through playing the single player through as the Point Man, or if you're playing co-op. And the idea here is that Point Man's been captured by Armacam somehow, and is imprisoned, of course. They're trying to interrogate him or something of that nature. It ends up being pretty stupid, actually. And he effectively has to escape and fight his way through Armacam forces in order to get back to Alma, who is now pregnant after events in the second game, which was the only important thing that actually happened in that game, I might add. And the idea is that her pregnancy is tearing the world apart. It is basically breaking reality and making all sorts of hell break loose. And you have to go and deal with that. Story in a nutshell right there. And the other thing that they try to tack on there is that it's a whole family thing, because Paxton and Point Man are brothers, and Alma is their mother, and so that's the whole, it's the family thing. They have to deal with the family thing. It's stupid. It fails miserably at trying to make you get attached to the storyline in any way. The characters end up being pretty stupid, actually, in a lot of ways. One of them pretty much ends up becoming a little more than a damsel in distress. And you're just like, really? You're going for that? You're going for all of these really tired tropes? Come on. And as a result, the story pretty much falls flat on its face and outright becomes annoying. Particularly when you combine it with the inconsistencies with the previous games. Like, why does Armacam suddenly have technology where they can phase through walls and teleport guys in, just out of nothing, with dudes in power armor with energy shields? Where did they get that? I mean, yes, they had lasers and mechs in the previous games, but that was more grounded. They didn't have friggin' teleportation devices. Anyway, you're just sitting there going, why does none of this make any sense? Why do none of these enemies make any sense? Most of the game, you're actually fighting Armacam troops, and that's about it. There are also other enemies in this game. When you get to a certain level, you'll have to fight zombies. They're not called zombies, but they're zombies because they behave like zombies, which means they just kind of run at you snarling and then try to beat you to death. It's stupid. There are other enemies throughout the game as well. Some of them are more powerful than others. Like, you got the guys in power armor with the energy shielding that are kind of annoying to deal with just because they take a lot of bullets to bring down. They're really not hard to bring down. They just take a long time. You've also got the zombies. You've got the monsters that will show up in the game, which is actually pretty late in the game when they show up. And they're actually weaker than the Armacam troops, if you can believe that. Which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, considering when you encounter them. Now, the worst part about the single player, though, is that it's so by the numbers. It is effectively just a modern FPS in a nutshell. Extremely linear, blocking off doors arbitrarily. Almost no exploration at all, except for maybe to find a collectible or to maybe find an extra bit of ammo that you don't even need. Enemies that come at you in waves until you manage to get to a certain point or to eliminate a certain enemy. It's really tiring. They even throw in a first-person cover system, which doesn't always work. In fact, it almost doesn't work. They do have a melee button where, guess what you whip out? You whip out a knife. Yeah, of course it's a knife, right? And if you are running and you do it, then you do a slide. So they brought that back. That's about it. And it ends up being a very by-the-numbers, very linear, very tiring FPS. It's nothing you haven't done before. The weapons are pretty stock for the most part. You got an SMG, an assault rifle which fires three-round bursts. You got a pistol, a shotgun. You got a rocket launcher. You got a sniper rifle. They tried to shake things up a bit by giving you the HV penetrator and the arc gun, I think it's called, which is basically just the laser from the previous games, only it sets things on fire. And then you got the penetrator, which is just the penetrator from the first game and the second game, where it was called something different, but I can't remember. It's the thing that pins people to walls with spikes. That's it. That's your arsenal. You also get dual machine pistols, but who cares about those, right? So, limited arsenal. None of it's particularly interesting to use, because you're just going to be using the assault rifle the entire game. It's incredibly powerful, as in one burst will take somebody out very easily, particularly with headshots. The SMG is actually pretty useful too. In fact, you can even use the pistol. I've tried it. I have gone through an entire level using nothing but the pistol, and it worked just fine. It was pathetic, actually. I've also gone through an entire level using nothing but melee. That was downright depressing. I shouldn't be able to do that. If you played the original F.E.A.R and F.E.A.R 2 even, you know that you can't do that, really. Because, unlike those two games, which didn't have regenerating health, this one does have regenerating health. And it regenerates very, very quickly. That's it. That kind of ruins the game. In fact, the the entire single-player experience is pretty much ruined. They don't even try with the horror in this game. It's all jump scares when it does happen, and other than that, they're like, you know what? Gore must be scary, so let's just... It's everywhere. For some reason. I don't know why, but it's not scary. It's actually kind of annoying. And so you have these jump scares, which have the generic horror movie stingers, and they just get really annoying. They're not even scary. In fact, they don't even make you jump, because you can just see them coming from a mile away. It's downright depressing how pathetic this game's horror elements are, and how pathetic its actual campaign is. And that's both in single player and in co-op. So, that's just sad. Well, what about the rest of the game? There's multiplayer elements as well. And you have a few modes, which unfortunately I was not able to play any of them online, because absolutely nobody plays this game online. Nobody. At least not on PC. At any rate, you have the modes Contractions, which is effectively Horde mode, if you've ever played it in other games. It's literally just that over again. Fight off waves of enemies, build up barricades for your stronghold kind of thing. Over time, you'll be able to get supply crates, which you can bring back to your stronghold thing, and that will give you access to new weapons and such. But that's pretty much it. It's just Horde mode. And it gets really, really tiresome. There's also Soul King, which is basically... It's almost like a deathmatch kind of thing, only you're trying to get as many souls as possible, because you're playing as a weird spirit thing. I've honestly never managed to get it to work properly. You can actually play these multiplayer modes in practice mode, and that's what I did. So, that's pretty much all there is to Soul King. I didn't manage to get that working, so I'm not really sure how it's supposed to work. But I think the basic idea is that you just try to get as many souls as possible. And then there's the mode called Fucking Run, which is basically this giant cloud of impending doom is coming out behind you, and you're trying to evade that. You're trying to run away from it. And all the while, you're having to deal with all sorts of enemies that are in your way. So, that's the only mode in the game that really does create any sort of tension, and even then, it's not really that much tension. It's not a good mode to play. So, when you have all this stuff blending together, you just look at this thing and go, okay, why? The entire game just comes across as something that was thrown together to make money. It doesn't come across as something that was actually made to be a good game. And it really shows when you have the pretty much by-the-numbers FPS stuff, where they just tacked on slow-mo to it, and tacked on the F.E.A.R moniker and everything. You've got these pretty much throwaway multiplayer modes where they sort of tried something different but didn't work. So, you've got the co-op, which, in theory, co-op makes games better, but in this case it doesn't. All it does is give you a compete with your friend thing, where throughout the game you get points anyway for doing all sorts of different things, and whoever has the most points at the end of the game, that's whoever, whatever character that is, that's the ending you get. So if it's Point Man, then you get one ending. If it's FETTEL, you get another ending. But both endings are crap, so whoever wins, you lose anyway. And unlike F.E.A.R 2, where it just kind of felt misguided, like it was just an attempt to bring console players into the mix and get them up to speed on the F.E.A.R storyline and everything, it felt like that with F.E.A.R 2, and it ended up being a pretty mediocre game as a result. But F.E.A.R 3, I don't know who this was made for. It wasn't made for F.E.A.R fans, because it doesn't play like a F.E.A.R game, really. It doesn't feel like a F.E.A.R game at all. And that's painfully obvious with the shotgun, even. I mean, if you play the original F.E.A.R, again, the shotgun in that game was fantastic. And in 2, they nerfed it. And in 3, it's outright pathetic. So it's certainly not for F.E.A.R fans. It doesn't feel like a F.E.A.R game. It doesn't play like a F.E.A.R game. It's not to bring new people into the series, I don't think, because it concludes the F.E.A.R storyline. I don't know what's going on with this game. I don't know who it was made for. I don't know who thought it would be a good idea to put this thing together the way it's put together. All I know is, it's not a good game. I give it a 1.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching.